Before we get started, I'd like to point out that captions can be turned on by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Next slide, please. Welcome to the open house for Phase 2 of engagement on the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project. My name is Megan Soroka, and I'm HRM's project manager on this project. We appreciate you joining us tonight virtually, and thank you for your patience with any technical challenges. Next slide, please. Before we begin today's presentation, we would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. HRM acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We would also like to affirm that we are in the decade for people of African descent. African Nova Scotians are a distinct founding people in our community who have been a key part of Nova Scotian culture and history. We acknowledge that African teachings, strength, and perseverance continue to challenge and inspire our community. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce the project team that will be participating in today's open house. As I mentioned, I am a program engineer and am leading the project for HRM. Mike Connors is the manager of transportation planning. Megan Backus is an active transportation planner and is leading the Africville Active Transportation Connections project. Dave Espeseth is a project planning coordinator with Halifax Transit. Deanna Wilmshurst is a client services coordinator and will be managing the webcast behind the scenes. HRM has hired WSP Canada to complete the functional plan and preliminary design. Greg O'Brien is the WSP project manager. Dave McCusker is a senior transportation engineer on the project. Jenny Lugar is a planner and will be leading their presentation today. I would also like to thank the area councillors for sharing the details of our public engagement and joining us tonight to listen to the comments and questions that we are hearing. Next slide, please. The agenda for tonight's meeting will include a presentation on the project background and the 2 concept design options that have been developed for the project. We will pause to collect comments throughout the presentation, and we'll have plenty of time for comments and questions following the presentation. Please note that tonight's meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be shared on the project page. In addition to the feedback we hear tonight, there is an online survey available on the project page until November 17th. Please visit shapeyourcityhalifax.ca to visit the project page. Next slide, please. To submit comments and questions, click the question mark at the top of your screen to open the Q&A window. There is an option to submit questions under your name or anonymously, and a reminder that this meeting will be recorded. Please note that submissions may not appear right away, as they will be moderated. Submitted questions will be answered following the presentation. We will show the slide again when asking for comments and questions. Please respect all points of view and opinions. Next slide, please. Before we get into the details of this evening's open house, I'd like to share an overview of the project. In partnership with the province of Nova Scotia and the Port of Halifax, HRM applied for funding to address a bottleneck located near a major port, the Fairview Cove Container Terminal. That bottleneck is the Windsor Street Exchange, and the project was awarded funding through the National Trade Corridors Fund in June 2019. Earlier this year, a contract was awarded to WSP to complete the functional plan and preliminary design for the project. We held the first phase of public engagement in the spring to hear how people use the Windsor Street Exchange and what improvements they would like to see. The feedback from that engagement, as well as data on the existing conditions, led to the development of 2 concept design options. In this second phase of public engagement, we are looking for feedback on the design options, which will be used in the evaluation of both options. We will also have an external technical review completed, which will provide recommendations to optimize the design options, with consideration of the project goals, safety, cost, and constructability. A third phase of public engagement is expected to take place in spring 2022, and will share the outcomes of the design option evaluation and results of the technical review, and how that informed the preliminary design. We will gather feedback on the preliminary design before moving forward into detailed design. The detailed design will be completed in 2023, and this involves the details of where infrastructure will be located and the development of construction drawings. Construction is expected to take 2 to 3 years, and we are planning to begin in 2024. Details on construction timelines and impacts will be shared after the design is completed. Next slide, please. I'll now hand it over to Jenny Lugar with WSP to share a bit of the project background.
Hi, everyone. We're really glad to have you here tonight. I'm going to run through some of the project background, as Megan said. Next slide, please. Firstly, the objectives of our meeting tonight. So we are here to review and receive feedback on refamiliarizing everybody with the project background. That's one of our major objectives, because we understand that lots of people weren't involved in the first round. Review concept options. We have 2 concept options, as Megan mentioned. Collect feedback and hopefully answer some questions for folks tonight, and then outline our project next steps. So the next times that you can get involved and where we're going from here. Next slide, please. So our current considerations, to jump right into the project background, and the 3 key considerations, while there are many, are that the Windsor Street Exchange is currently operating at over its capacity, and it's an extremely important intersection specifically for freight movement for the Fairview Cove Container Terminal. The second is that it is one of only 5 roadway entries onto the Halifax Peninsula, which is a key consideration for vehicle movement of other forms of active transportation, and of course, emergency vehicle movement. And third, there are many stakeholders in this project, considering the many different landowners and interests around the area. So that includes the province of Nova Scotia, the Port of Halifax, public utilities, adjacent landowners, Halifax Harbour Bridges Commission, and of course the public. Next slide, please. Here is our project study area. It has 2 key intersections in it. The first, of course, is the Windsor Street Exchange, where the Windsor Street ramp that goes to the McKay Bridge meets the Bedford Highway, meets Windsor Street Exchange, and meets Lady Hammond Road. There's a secondary intersection that we're looking at here at the Lady Hammond Road and Kempt Road intersection. And as you'll see when we're going through the options, there is a third intersection that comes into play once we start to look at what is the usable area for this redesign, and that is the Bain Street intersection there, where you see the Windsor Street ramp and Bain Street intersecting. Next slide, please. So the scope of the study is fairly broad and is trying to balance many different objectives. The first is how to improve safety for all road users. That includes people driving, walking, cycling, carrying goods from place to place. The next is how to improve the efficiency and functionality of this intersection for vehicle and goods movements. The third is how to enhance user experience and safety for people walking, rolling, and cycling. We recognize that this is not exactly a user-friendly or safe experience that many people have gone through. And then finally, how to integrate with the Bus Rapid Transit Green Line from Joseph Howe Drive and the transit priority measures coming to the Bedford Highway. So as you can see, lots of competing interests here, and we're doing our best in the options here to balance both, and you're going to learn more about that in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So when talking about project integration, this is a really important feature because this intersection, of course, connects to many different parts of both on and off the peninsula, many different parts of the road network. So the first is the Bedford Highway Functional Plan, which was endorsed by Regional Council in 2020, and HRM staff has now been proceeding with the design of this Bedford Highway in an effort to establish a formal right-of-way based on the balanced modes option. So very similar to what we're looking for here, a bit of a balanced approach. The Windsor Street Exchange project will connect to the Bedford Highway to meet the objectives of both functional plans. So we're keeping in mind roughly where these 2 projects meet in their scope areas, especially. Next slide, please. The next is the Rapid Transit Strategy, which was approved by Council also in 2020. It aims to provide bus riders with fast, frequent, comfortable, and high capacity service. As I mentioned earlier, the BRT Green Route will run through the project, or will be integrated with the project, and will eventually run through the new Windsor Street Exchange. Next slide, please. Africville Active Transportation Connections project is an ongoing project that is, due to its proximity to the Windsor Street Exchange, is being considered, they're being considered in tandem, which has been a great advantage. So initially, this project looked at 3 potential routes and did some preliminary engagement with the community. Further engagement is ongoing right now. The project team has narrowed it down into a preferred route and is looking for feedback on this route. There will be some further discussion later on about how to potentially connect into Africville, into this area from our subject site for the Windsor Street Exchange. But for this project specifically, there is an online survey available until November 2nd. That's available on the Shape Your City page, which can be accessed through the Windsor Street Exchange Shape Your City page, which we'll have a link for at the end of the presentation here this evening. Next slide, please. So I'm going to review a little bit of what we heard from our phase 1 of public engagement. Next slide, please. So we had a really excellent feedback from the first round of engagement. We had 1,459 individuals contribute to the online survey, give us their feedback that way. We had 30 individuals who attended a virtual public open house similar to the one that we're having this evening. And we talked to over 20 different stakeholders, including groups and individuals who, based on various different interests, have a special stake, I guess, in this project. Next slide, please. So in the online survey, we asked participants to rate their top priorities for improvements to the Windsor Street Exchange. And in order, as you can see on this slide here, those were reduction of traffic congestion and delays for cars, the comfort and safety for people driving, the reduction of traffic congestion and delays for buses, the comfort and safety of people biking, and finally the comfort and safety of people walking or using a mobility device. Next slide, please. We also asked the participants in the online survey in the last round to look at trade-offs and how you might balance all these different modes that are competing for space and for priority through the Windsor Street Exchange, in recognition that there's a finite amount of space in this area and there's a limitation to what the types of modes that we can accommodate with this finite space. So when asked this question, 43% of individuals who responded to the survey were in support of increasing or maintaining private vehicle travel times in order to improve bus travel times. 46% were in support of increasing or maintaining private vehicle travel times in order to improve safety and comfort for people walking or using mobility devices. 42% were in support of that trade-off in order to improve safety and comfort for people biking. And finally, 32% were in support of increasing or maintaining private vehicle travel times in order to improve travel times for the transportation of goods. So that helps to give us a bit of an idea of where we might allocate different attention and different priority, and that's going to be looked into further with the project team as it advances. Once we're narrowing down the different benefits for each option. Next slide, please. There was also an opportunity on the Shape Your City webpage to participate in an online mapping survey. This survey allowed us to collect geospatial or geographic data in order to understand specific pinch points, areas of concern, that sort of thing. And that was it. So the feedback that we got from that was significant, but a lot of the kind of common themes there were some participants felt the project should increase the safety for all users, while others felt that private vehicle movement should be prioritized as that's the highest volume user in this area. And then others felt that on the flip side, vulnerable users like active transportation users, people walking, biking, rolling, should be prioritized due to their vulnerability. Another common thread was that better signage and infrastructure is needed at the Windsor Street Exchange, so directional signage infrastructure in order to meet different needs for people traveling in different directions, and we will address some of how our options have addressed that later on in the presentation. The third was that individuals who walk, roll, or bike are really using the Windsor Street Exchange due to the lack of safe infrastructure. This was brought up a couple of times in the online survey as well. Individuals were asking the project team to keep in mind that we may not get the feedback that we're looking for in terms of the volumes of people who are walking, rolling, and biking because of the state of the infrastructure right now. And there was hope that the project team would look to, being aspirational and hoping to get more people able to walk, bike, and roll through this area. And then finally, better connectivity to the Africville National Historic Site and the Fairview neighborhood were two things that came up a fair bit when we were looking at locational data for this project. Next slide, please. This is a map that shows that the different data and feedback that we collected. As you can see, there were significant comments in a couple of the areas that I mentioned. Next slide, please. So I believe this is a repeat. Could you go to the next slide, please? No, it's not. Okay. Sorry. So some of the most frequent improvements that were expressed by participants included improvements for people driving or using AT from Joseph Howe to Bedford Highway towards the Windsor Street Exchange. So as you saw on the map there, that was one that had a lot of comments. The next is improved wayfinding and navigation through the Windsor Street Exchange. We're going to get into a little bit of this later on in our options review. Next is improved merging and reduction of lane switching, especially on the approach from the Bedford Highway towards the Windsor Street Exchange, but definitely in all directions as well. Improved active transportation infrastructure throughout the study area. And then finally, improved clarity and safety for people driving to navigate the Windsor Street Exchange. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand this over now to my colleague Greg O'Brien, who's going to be running through the design options. There will be a chance during these design options to pause at the end of each option, and we're going to ask participants to give us some feedback using the chat Q&A box there. So keep that in mind while you're listening to this presentation, that there will be a chance to give some quick feedback. I'll hand this over to Greg now.
Good evening. Thank you, Jenny. And I guess what we've been waiting for is to kind of see what we've been working on since we, I guess, we're out to the meetings that were mentioned earlier in the spring. So as was mentioned, we have two options we're presenting this evening. So what I'll do, I'll walk through the first option, what we're calling, I believe, option A. Very innovative naming. Next slide. I guess before we got to option A, I guess we did look at a lot of different concepts. We met with the HRM project teams, reviewed different, I guess, ideas for, I guess, improvements to the area to separate different traffic flows. A few of these are presented there that we looked at during the concept stage, looked at the traffic volumes to see what would work, what would physically fit in the area. An interesting one that did show some promise was kind of a displaced left intersection that really kind of moves a lot of the heavy volumes away from the main intersection, but keeps everything without overpass structures. And I guess that did require a lot of land, which was quite constrained in this area. Some other larger kind of grade separated with bridges over to separate, I guess, some of the higher volume movements, and really seeing what other options would work to really fit into this area. What the two options we're presenting this evening were really a combination of some of the features that were working well, of the concepts that were, I guess, worked through, and I guess some of the areas where we had other challenges kind of pieced together to get the two options that we're presenting this evening. Next. So now option A. The option A looks at the area, looking at, I guess, separating some of the higher volume movements. As I mentioned, we looked at in the concept level, some of the higher volume movements are separated from the main intersections with bridge structures, grade separated, so they can actually bypass the busier Windsor Street intersection. And then the option A looks at using roundabouts to control the traffic flow rather than the traffic signals we see now. What we're seeing on the screen now are roundabouts that would be more similar in size to the roundabouts we see at Larry Utech. And I guess we're all getting more used to roundabouts now, but previously we would compare to the Armdale roundabout, which is quite a bit larger than this. So I think the Armdale roundabout would probably be 50% larger than the roundabouts we're seeing here. The next slide, we'll explain the two colors on there. So we'll start by, I guess, describing, I guess, some of the features of the options, and I guess how do we get through the area. So what we're looking at this screen is, I guess, how the active transportation has been accommodated in this option. So the blue dash line we can see the cemetery and the Fairview interchange to the left side of the screen, and this option looks at I guess upgrading the existing sidewalk there to a multi-use pathway. If you follow that multi-use pathway, the blue line from left to right, it gets over to a roundabout at Windsor Street. Crossings at the roundabout at Windsor Street, we expect that those crossings would probably include the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So those are as push button activated, the flashing light bars that you see at many crosswalks around HRM now. Cross over to the north side of Lady Hammond Road and continue on towards McIntosh Street. The multi-use path is, I guess, in this turns north and travels along McIntosh Street, and I'll explain in a moment why I guess it is heading there, just to the project limits for now. The sidewalk network is depicted by the pink lines, and the solid are really where there are existing sidewalks, and this network looks at adding sidewalk along Bain Street. The big rectangular greenish looking building in the middle is actually the new HRM Works Depot that is under construction. So if you've been through the area, you see a large building under construction. That is, I guess it wasn't available in the aerial photo, but it is under construction there. So I just wanted to show that for context. So along Bain Street, I guess the option looks at adding sidewalk along Bain Street to connect to the building with the ambassadors and the HRM Works Depot under construction, as well as there's a connection that's not available now, is a kind of a north-south, so you can walk north across the Windsor Street, or across the Bedford Highway from Windsor Street, and get over to Bain Street and towards Africville Road. So, next slide, please. They just mentioned, I guess, the reason that we connected down McIntosh Street with the multi-use path. So really just this slide focuses on the multi-use path and really shows what we're looking at, kind of other projects happening around the area, because we don't want to make a trail or a road network go to nowhere. So as Jenny had mentioned in previous slides, I guess there's a I think I'm back. Sorry, I think I was lost for a second there. I didn't go anywhere. On the west side at A, I guess the western boundary of our project area is connecting to plans for multi-use path facilities on the Bedford Highway. If we carry along with the blue line over to B, there's plans for active transportation bike facilities on Windsor Street, and depending on how those facilities are ultimately decided, this plan is looking to connect into, I guess, the connections at Windsor Street. If we carry over to C and then turn down McIntosh towards D, there's a current project looking to connect the Africville Heritage Museum from the north end of the project area with a multi-use trail. Right now, that would leave a gap between this project area and the Heritage Museum. So there is, I guess, options being considered of how to connect that missing link now that we know, I guess, a couple options that may be possible for the Windsor Street area. So for this project, it would bring a multi-use pathway to around D, and a potential, I guess, project in conjunction with this would travel along McIntosh and cross over. There's a railway corridor, I guess, along Africville Road, so cross over that and have a facility along Africville Road. Next slide, please. It's a major hub or interchange for traffic, for pedestrian movements, but also a lot of the transit routes do travel through this area. There's limited connections onto the peninsula and onto, I guess, other areas towards the McKay Bridge. So this is a map similar to what you see for a transit route map, kind of showing how all the transit connections would be accommodated through this corridor. I guess really special attention to the BRT corridor that's being planned and what kind of improvement options and enhanced features could be accommodated for that. We don't have a lot of those to present this evening on, I guess, exact transit priority measures, but that will be flushed out over the next phase of this project. Next slide, please. We put a couple of slides in here just to give a context of, I guess, how much traffic volume we're dealing with. So a thicker red line in this case shows that we have higher volumes. So during the AM peak, there's a lot of traffic going from, I guess, the left side of the plan from Bedford and the Fairview interchange really towards the McKay Bridge. So on the right side of the plan, the wide red line there, the thicker line down through the middle is one that's it's really bypassing both roundabouts we're seeing here with called grade separation. So a bridge structure so that the other, I guess, minor roads would travel underneath and the traffic flow can continue on and uninterrupted towards Dartmouth. The roundabout at the bottom, you can see, is still a very significant volume, very, I guess, thicker red lines traveling through that. So it's still significant volume. I guess this whole area handles a lot of traffic during the peak periods, as anybody that's traveling through the area can certainly see. I have a similar slide next that is just look very similar. This is the PM peak. I guess in this option, we can see that Bain Street has at the top end has very thin lines, so it's a very minor, I guess, road in this network, but it does provide important connections to the new HM Works Depot as well as to the Fairview Cove Container Terminal, and it allows for connections to Africville Road directly from Bedford Highway. Right now, you can turn right out of that area and go towards Bedford, but if you're coming from Bedford, you can't get directly into that area. So next few slides gonna walk through some of the movements, the key movements, just to help describe how traffic does flow through this area. So they might be a little bit repetitive, but I'll just walk through this first one and then we can get a sense of how we describe these movements. So slide we see here is how would you get from Bedford Highway to and from Lady Hammond Road. So I'm just going to describe, we start at A, kind of from the Fairview interchange. We travel along Bedford Highway to the Windsor Street roundabout at B. We complete a straight through movement at the roundabout, and then we continue on to C. So very similar to how you would do that movement now by traveling straight through the signalized intersection. The reverse movement, I guess you're coming from Lady Hammond Road at D. We travel straight through a roundabout at E. We get to F, we travel underneath the overpass structure that has the traffic going to Dartmouth. We can bypass the Bain Street roundabout and then continue on to G. So bypassing the second roundabout really keeps the volume very low for the Bain Street roundabout. So I think there might be 6 pairs of these that we can go through, and I'll just walk through just to show how I guess all the major movements through this area are accommodated. So to get from Bedford Highway to and from Windsor Street, we travel A to B. So continue along Bedford Highway and turn right to Windsor Street, very similar to existing. To get back from Windsor Street towards Bedford, you start at C, turn left at the roundabout. And again, you get to E, you go underneath, bypass the second roundabout, and you're on your way. There's 2 options I'll describe for the eastbound movement here. That's might be a little bit, but if we start at A and we're coming from Bedford on the Bedford Highway, and we want to go to the McKay Bridge, for example, we would, I guess, travel from A, we would travel right through the middle of the corridor without stopping anywhere and end up at C, and I guess continue along to McKay Bridge or to Roby Street, Barrington Street, etc. If we're coming from the Joseph Howe ramp at A, the grade separation component of the structure begins in that area. So you cannot actually get from the Fairview ramp onto the overpass bypass section. That does a couple things as well. I guess it improves some of the weaving that happens currently in that area. So right now, I guess traffic that travels up that ramp, a lot of it that wants to go to the McKay Bridge has to weave and travel across lanes of traffic, while at the same time traffic from Bedford is weaving to get over towards the Kempt Road, Ladyham, Windsor Street approaches. So to get to Dartmouth from the Joseph Howe ramp, you would continue along the Bedford Highway at the same elevation as the cemetery. You would get to the roundabout at Windsor Street, and you would turn left at the roundabout and continue on your way. So the grade separation portion removes a lot of the traffic from that movement that you currently see with the traffic signals in the left turn. So that I guess over half of that left turning volume is, I guess, separated onto the bypass road. So that helps facilitate this option. I think we just have a couple more movements. I guess one of the drivers for the project is how do we get to the Fairview Cove container terminal? I guess more and better connected for the goods movement and the trucks traveling in and out of that area. So we'll start with from that area and Africville Road if you want to get to the McKay Bridge. So this is where the second roundabout at Bain Street comes in. So if you start at A, you get to the roundabout at Bain Street at B, you travel straight through that roundabout and you get over to the roundabout at Lady Hammond Road, Bedford Highway, and you complete a left turn and you're on your way to Dartmouth at D. To get into the Fairview Cove container terminal, you start at E, you take a ramp, so you, I guess, get off of the part that's bypassing, you continue straight to the Bain Street roundabout at F, go straight through at G, and then you're at your destination. All right. So this one is Windsor Street to McKay Bridge, so it's pretty straightforward. If you want to Windsor Street, you go A, B, straight through the roundabout, and C, you're on your way. To get back, you start at D, you get, I guess, at E, you go underneath the higher volume movements. At F, you go straight through at the roundabout and you continue on to Windsor Street. Yes, I know this might sound complicated trying to show everything at once, but really, I guess anybody really knows what needs to know what do they need to do to get from point A to point B. So in this case, to get to the container terminal, if you go start at A, get turn left at B, and I guess if you remember previously, we could have bypassed to continue on to the Bedford Highway at that point, but we continue on to the circle at C and go straight through that roundabout, and you're at the container terminal and Africville Road as well. To get out of there, it's very similar to today. You basically just make a right turn onto the Bedford Highway. So I mentioned it might sound a little bit complicated trying to see all those movements at once, but if you're on your way through the area, you want to know, for example, how do I get from Bedford Highway to the McKay Bridge? So similar to today, there's signage. I guess at this stage in design, we don't have the exact location or messages for the signs, but just have a few photos of some typical signs we would see and are currently out there in the Bedford Highway. So if you, I guess, A in the top left, if you want to go to the McKay Bridge from the Bedford Highway, there's signage indicating get into the left lanes. Similarly, Lady Hammond Road, Kempt Road. So very similar in that area to existing. I guess the exception would be if you're coming from Bedford, there would be signage indicating, hey, you can bypass the roundabout and use the grade separation portion. Not dissimilar to what we see at traffic signals. If you want to turn left at a roundabout, then I guess getting in your proper lane as you're approaching is quite important. So just have a photo here at the top right. That's one of the signs that's at the Larry Utech roundabout, and it's indicating, I guess, if you want to go from 9 Mile Drive towards or towards 9 Mile Drive or Highway 102, you get in the left lane. If you want to go other destinations, you get in the right lane. So we expect probably there'd be a combination of some overhead signage as well as, I guess, in the bottom right. That's one of the signs. It's currently on North Park Street around the Halifax Common, and really it's telling you some additional information as well. So if you're in the left lane, you can go to Kennard Street, for example, and it gives a little tutorial of what the lane configuration you could expect to see as you're approaching the circle. So again, if you just need to know, I guess, one piece of information at a time, and I guess that's part of the signage meshes that will come out further through design for any of the options that are selected. Okay, maybe I'll just turn it over to Jenny for a few minutes to, I guess, answer or to get some of the feedback we're getting here. I guess just want to pause for a second, get a couple of thoughts from some of the audience here of what we just saw.
Thanks, Greg. So I see that there is a little bit of feedback, a couple questions coming in. We're going to, if you'll indulge me, I think we are going to hold those off until the end, and then we'll take a look at them all. We'll filter them all through as when we get to the end of the Q&A. The thing we're looking for here, if again you will indulge us, is how would you make this option better? So you've seen option A, you've seen what the different movements are through for different users. We're really looking to understand very quickly, right off kind of, napkin math sort of, how would you make this option better? If you want to put your comments into the chat bubble, next slide actually, that should have an indication of how to contribute. Oh, no, I guess it doesn't. Never mind, go back, sorry about that. So if you are to open the Q&A bubble that's up on the top of your screen there, you should be able to answer this question. So I'm seeing questions about this option come in, but no feedback on this yet. We'll give it another couple minutes in case anybody wants to let us know how they might improve this option.
Maybe we carry on and show option B and let the audience, I guess, consider both options and kind of.
Yep, nope, that sounds great. Okay, so if anybody has any, oh wait, we do have one. Sorry about that, almost left you behind. So this is less interaction between active transportation and vehicles with fewer crosswalks, direct overpasses for active transportation, that sort of thing. So complete separation of the modes. Okay, great, thank you. The next is that Windsor Street has a bike lane, makes sense to connect this to that. So connecting between the facilities that are close by to one another. A couple of these are questions. This one is flashing lights for pedestrians are inadequate. We need pedestrian overpasses. So something to separate different modes. I would make traffic free flow from Joe Howe to the express lanes through the Windsor Street Exchange to the McKay Bridge. The next is love it. Excellent. No changes, I guess that means. Improvement for A would be a flyover from Joe Howe to the Joseph Howe Drive to the bridge. Improvement would be to add protected cycling infrastructure and walking infrastructure on the north side of the Bedford Highway. So that's when we're talking about the section of the Bedford Highway that may fall into the Bedford Highway functional plan area. More direct path for trucks to the container terminal. Improvement to connect cycling facilities to the Bedford Highway bike lanes. So interconnectivity between those projects. As I mentioned before, that is definitely an objective of this project. Just to clear that up, we'll absolutely be looking for ways to connect and not leave gaps in that network there. Reducing walking distances. Separation for cyclists from vehicles, overpass with a bike lane. especially from Bain Street to the Bedford Highway. Equalized priority for active transportation of vehicles, no stopping time for any mode if possible. That would be a traffic engineer's dream. I think the rest of these are questions. And we will continue to hold those until the end. That was some great feedback, everybody. Thank you very much. And we will continue on, and Greg's going to show you option B.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. No, my microphone says it's muted, but I guess I'm good. So we'll walk through, I guess, similar fashion option B, just to, I guess, describe it and I guess see if there's some similarities and I guess some differences. One of the similarities that we're looking at is really the active transportation network is, I guess, using some very similar features. So if we look at the dark blue dashed line, looking at using a multi-use pathway along the cemetery, and again at the western end connecting into plans for through the Bedford Highway functional planning study. Continuing across the Windsor Street intersection, this option continuing along Lady Hammond Road. And this option does make use of a series of traffic signals. So in this option, Macintosh Street at Lady Hammond does have traffic signals. So crossing at a traffic signalized intersection and continuing along Macintosh Street with a multi-use pathway. Along with that, I guess, adding pedestrian sidewalk connections along Bain Street and underneath the overpass structure. So this option does make use of an overpass structure at Windsor Street, kind of right in the center of this plan. So I will just north of there, so where the hand is pointing, and we'll walk through similar movements. How do you get through this area in a few moments? Maybe the next slide. I think the next slide really just shows the active transportation movements again. So for the same context, I don't know if anybody has joined us since the last one, but the I guess greenish brownish building at the middle of the screen that's the new under construction HRM Works building depot, and I guess looking to add sidewalk along Bain Street and as well as across I guess north on Windsor Street towards Bain Street. So to complete a few missing pedestrian and active transportation connections in the area. Next, please. So similar to what we just looked at for option A, this makes looks at to make sure we are connecting to, I guess, active transportation facilities planned on the Bedford Highway. I guess bike lanes or any other future active transportation bike facilities on Windsor Street, again, can be accommodated with this option. And look at the, yes, there will be further options looked at to connect really from E towards Africville Road and further to the north to fill in a gap in the network in that area. Looked at, I guess, again, important node for getting transit movements through. And I guess this map shows all the different transit routes that currently use it, plus the proposed bus rapid transit route that travels from Joseph Howe Drive and really gets over to Massachusetts Avenue and onto Roby Street. So again, yes, it's accommodated through this area, and we'll, as we move further through the design, we'll be considering what options to, I guess, really enhance and improve travel times through the area for transit movements. I guess, similar to the last one, we've got a couple diagrams showing how traffic volumes are really flowing through the area. So the thicker lines are, I guess, higher volumes again. And we can see that in the AM, we're starting to get a little more traffic on Bain Street. It becomes a more important connection in this option. And I guess the key features of the option is the grade separation of the thickest line really traveling over top of Windsor Street, right in the center. So really removing some of the higher volume movements from the main intersection. If we flip to the next slide, it would show the PM peak, and in the PM peak, we see Bain Street does get even a little bit busier, and I'll explain that as we looked at the different movements. In this option, I guess Bain Street is used to get to Windsor Street and to the container terminal. So the exit coming from Dartmouth would be just off this plan to the north. So we'll see that when we go through the same traffic movements we had just seen. To the next slide. So we'll walk through, I guess, the same. I believe it was 6 key movements through the area. How do you get through it now, and how will this option impact that? So if we're going from Bedford Highway and traveling towards Lady Hammond Road, we started A, and it's really similar to existing. You just continue on at B and C through the Windsor Street intersection, cross the signalized intersection at Kempt Road, and continue on. Now, the difference from existing for this one is between C and D on this image is one way eastbound, one way towards E. So if you want to go from Lady Hammond Road towards Bedford, you would, at F, you would turn right down McIntosh Street. At G, you'd turn left onto Bain Street. At H, travel through a signalized intersection, continue past Afkaville Road at I, and then continue on to J. So that's why I guess what we're seeing is there's more volume on Bain Street because it's really separate in the eastbound movement on the C and D, and the outbound movement on the G and H side of this image. Next slide, and I'll just go through the rest of the kind of key movements. So again, one of the funding options for this is to, or the objectives is to really connect the container terminal. So how do, I guess, trucks get into the container terminal from Bedford Highway or from Joseph Howe Drive? So at A, continue over to B, which is Windsor Street, turn left at a signalized intersection at C. At C, you turn left at another signalized intersection and then turn right towards D. To get back towards Bedford and Joseph Howe Drive, you really just take a right turn and travel towards G on Bedford Highway. I guess between Joseph Howe Drive and the McKay Bridge, I guess begin to come up the ramp at A, continue along to signalized intersection at B, you travel straight across the signals, and at C, continue on towards Dartmouth. Again, this is where the grade separation component comes in. If you're coming from Bedford at A, you would be able to stay on the grade separated portion, and you would continue right on to C without going through the intersection. So again, moving a significant volume of traffic from the intersection really makes the intersection, I guess, more of an urban intersection. I guess we heard some comments about some pedestrian overpasses just on the last option, but I guess removing and reducing the size of the intersection as much as possible is really what we're aiming to do here. To get from Dartmouth towards Bedford, it's again, it's grade separated, so very straightforward movement. You travel from D to E. Now the movements into the area to get off to Windsor Street or other streets towards, I guess in this image here, towards the Fairview Cove container terminal, you actually exit the, I guess, facility from Barrington Street and the McKay Bridge a little bit sooner than the option A we just looked at. So at F, that's actually an existing section of Bain Street. So near where the ramp that takes you to Roby Street, just north of here, I guess turns off, we would have a I guess, another lane that also exits onto Bain Street. So we get that into the network here at F. We continue across Macintosh Street at a signalized intersection, travel towards a signalized intersection at H. And then we turn right onto Africville Road towards the Favre Cove Canada Terminal at J. To get back to Dartmouth from the area, you start at A, and you turn left at B. You travel a little ways on Bain Street, turn right onto Windsor Street, and then at a signalized intersection, you turn left onto ramp that takes you up to E and towards Dartmouth. Just a few more of these movements to go through. This one is, I guess, Windsor Street to between Windsor Street and Bedford Highway. So A to B, very similar to existing. Travel along Bedford Highway, turn right onto Windsor Street. To get back, you travel north on Windsor Street, straight through the intersection at D, signalized intersection. You complete a left turn at Bain Street and continue on to F. And you're on your way to Joseph Howe Drive, Bedford Highway. Windsor Street and McKay Bridge. So from Windsor Street, we go travel northbound. We go straight and veer, and then veer right as you're traveling through the signalized intersection, and you're on your way to the McKay Bridge. On your way back, you take the same exit that I mentioned at D. Travel straight along Bain Street, signalized intersection at E, left at signalized intersection at F, straight through signalized intersection at G, and you're on your way to Windsor Street. Again, looking at all those movements at once is, I know it's a little overwhelming. So what does best when you want to get from one origin to one destination? How do you travel through the network? So again, series of signs. So I guess top left image, again, a sign that's actually existing out there, and be probably pretty similar to what we would have in this case, telling you if you want to go to Kempt Road, you stay in the right lane, Lady Hammond in the middle lanes, and then McKay Bridge. The images on the right are, I guess, how we get to that Robie Street exit I mentioned. So how do you know to get, I guess, off earlier to get to Windsor Street? So I guess the top right image at B is one of the existing signs, and it would probably need to be some modifications to that, but really C would really, that's where the Robie Street exit is. And right now on the left pane, it's okay. Sorry, I just cut out for a second. As mentioned, I guess the Windsor Street would really be on the right sign. So you take that ramp on the right to get to Robie Street or Windsor Street, and I guess the exact sign message is a little early in the project to know that, but we have put a little bit of thought into that just to see, I guess separation of decision points so that it's not overwhelming for a driver new to the area traveling through. It might be actually a little more confusing for us that are all familiar with traveling through it, because it is going to be quite different than what it is now. Because we travel through, I don't know, I don't think I really pay attention to the signs until I started looking at them as part of this project. So turn it over to Jenny to get, I guess, a few more thoughts on what we just saw for option B.
Okay, so similar to what we did last time, we're looking for any improvements that you might make to this option, not necessarily in comparison to option A, but improvements that you think would help make this option better. We'll give folks a few minutes to put things into the chat. It's the same thing as you put an answer into the Q&A, and then we'll be pushing that. Okay, so we've got one here, which is provide separated bike lanes and sidewalks versus multi-use pathways. So separate out people biking and people walking. This is kind of a comparison, but I think it's relevant here. So option A has incorporated principles of roundabouts, which are safer and more efficient than transitional intersections found in option B. So I guess an improvement to option B then would be incorporating roundabouts. This also features active transportation pathway that doesn't connect to the heart of the city. It'd be nice for bikes to be directed to the core. Be great to have a little more information on which direction you mean. If there are really no options to provide separated bike lanes and sidewalks, make the multi-use pathways the maximum recommended width of 4 meters. Okay, that would be an improvement that someone's looking for. Provide dedicated BRT lanes for some of the routes. Okay, that's an improvement. Fewer or no crosswalks. Priority should be focused on active transportation to encourage the mode and provide increased safety and sense of security. More direct travel for active transportation would be great as well, as efficient paths will discourage this mode of travel. There's some questions here. A recommended same improvement as for A, protected cycling infrastructure connections to other AT infrastructure. So as mentioned, that's definitely something that we're keeping in mind, is connecting to other AT infrastructure. Making the connection to Africville Road from Macintosh Street to close the Round the Peninsula gap. So I think that that's an improvement here, but I think that that's kind of in the vision here. It's just slightly outside of the project scope area. Dedicated transit lanes, not just queue jumping. This is a question. Also a question. Make a 2-vehicle holding area at the entrance to the roundabout with the crosswalk behind that holding area. This is a comment on this, I think specifically on option B. So lack of options for rapid transit is concerning. Giving priority to mass transportation or transit, sorry. This one is a bit of a comparison as well. If I understood correctly, it looks like Bedford Highway to Windsor Street and Joe Howe McKay Bridge would still be competing for lanes. If that's the case, this would present a pain point that already exists. Otherwise, option A also seems to have a far more free flow of traffic. No stoplights equals huge win. So we're getting into some comparison, which is quite all right. We're going to get into that in the presentation a little bit later. Make all crosswalk markings thermoplastic, use accessible pedestrian signals as well as RRFBs for the crosswalks. So these are definitely things that will be considered when we get further into the design process. Pedestrian and bicycle crossings all occur at slip lanes. Look at this places pedestrians and cyclists at a distant third in terms of hierarchy there, I think. Need AT infrastructure on the north side of Bedford Highway, immediate small solutions to improve safety while waiting for final implementation in several years. So interim solutions is what this individual is looking for. Making a strong connection with the Bedford Highway AT plans, ensuring the AT movement through the Joe Howe ramp is very, very safe. That's certainly something that's being considered by the project team. Improvements for option B would include making a way for traffic from Joseph Howe to bypass the intersection and go directly to the bridge. I believe that that's what's being presented here. Providing a high level of lighting for pedestrian and cycling safety, absolutely a good consideration. Option B incorporates much of what presently exists, and that seems counterintuitive to the whole project objective. Okay. Shorter travel distances for walking and cycling routes is an improvement that someone's looking for. Removing signal intersection headed to the bridge that Bedford Highway and Joseph Howe Windsor Street drivers would use. And then finally, someone's saying it doesn't seem like there's consideration given for pedestrians or cyclists coming up the Bedford Highway and crossing the traffic coming up Joseph Howe Drive. A dangerous maneuver for people, and doesn't seem to see any improvement between current and future for B. Okay, I think that's all of the improvements that have been listed here for folks for option B. So we're going to move on to a comparison of these two options. I believe, Deanna, if you want to, or I guess an evaluation of these two options. So I'm going to go through this with everybody. Next slide, please. So we looked at all the different criteria that are informing this project in order to help us balance all these different competing interests that we have for this project. And what we've done here is a fairly high level evaluation of the two different options based on these criteria. And of course, this is going to get narrowed down into a more precise evaluation of the two options once we have a little bit more precision on what the design looks like for each. We wanted to bring it at this early stage so that we could get that feedback so that we could make any necessary adjustments before we get too far into the process. So for option A, some of the benefits are that the active transportation connection to Windsor Street, Lady Hammond Road and the Bedford Highway has been introduced and significantly improved from existing. There's a grade separation of the high volume movements, which reduces the at-grade vehicle conflicts. So that overpass that we were looking at, which is presented in both options to allow vehicles to travel directly from the Bedford Highway to the McKay Bridge. This option provides direct access between the Fairview Cove Container Terminal and the road network in all directions. This option separates the Bedford Highway and the Joseph Howe approaches to reduce the need to lane switch or weave. That was a really key consideration from the public engagement that we heard, was that the lane switching when trying to travel from Joseph Howe Drive over to the ramps under the McKay Bridge was something that was concerning for a lot of people. This removes lanes that end abruptly on the Bedford Highway. There were a couple of those that were identified through that mapping exercise that I showed you earlier. Creates a direct route for transit buses from all directions with reduced need to merge or switch lanes. So that was another, obviously the lane switching is a big consideration for transit, and this does create that direct route that we're looking for. Improves current travel times in all directions during the AM and PM peak period. So that's obviously a very key criteria, is that looking at what those travel times are and looking to improve them to meet a goal. Property impacts are predominantly on publicly owned land, so that's a big consideration of this. It influences what the cost of the eventual implementation of the new interchange is going to be. There's a smaller project area than option B, which, as I mentioned, may result in lower implementation costs, less infrastructure, less land to acquire, that sort of thing. And there are 6 multi-use pathway crossings and shorter wait time at crossing as compared to option B, with reduced turning vehicle conflicts as compared to option B. The drawbacks of option A include that it does require land acquisition from the Fairview Cove Container Terminal and potentially one private landowner. The transit will travel in mixed traffic in this option as it is presented right now. There is a perceived concern that roundabouts can be more difficult to navigate for first-time or one-time users. So a lot of people feel that roundabouts are less navigable if you've never encountered one before, or if you've never encountered the intersection before. And then finally, there's a longer bridge length as compared to option B. They do both have bridges, but this bridge is longer. So that has impacts, cost, infrastructure, complication impacts, sort of thing. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at option B. The benefits of option B that we've identified at this stage are same as option A, that it does create and improve that active transportation connection to Windsor Street, Lady Hammond Road and the Bedford Highway by introducing a series of multi-use path and sidewalk. There's the grade separation of high volume movements, which reduces the at-grade vehicle conflict. This is again the same as option A. It has that overpass that connects between the Bedford Highway and the McKay Bridge on ramps. Improved connection to the Fairview Cove Container Terminal, similarly to option A, with the exception of from Roby Street / Massachusetts Avenue. So that connection has not been made more direct. It separates the Bedford Highway and Joseph Howe approaches, which reduces the need to lane switch or weave. So that addresses that issue that was brought up frequently during our first round of public engagement. Removes the lanes that end abruptly on Bedford Highway, again addressing an issue that was brought up frequently during public engagement. Improves current travel times for many key movements during AM and PM peak periods, with some exceptions that are listed over in our right column here. So that's obviously a key consideration, is how much the improvements are significant on travel times. And then finally, there are 6 multi-use pathway crossings at the roadways, which is the same as option A, but we're going to get into some of the drawbacks that might exist for option B in terms of active transportation in a minute. So the drawbacks for option B include, same as option A, in this current iteration, the transit travels and mixed traffic. This does not improve travel times for movements from Lady Hammond Road to the Bedford Highway or from the McKay Bridge to Windsor Street. So that's a key consideration. It does improve for some movements, but not all. It doesn't provide a strong connection for transit to the Bedford Highway from Lady Hammond and Kempt Roads. Apologies, that's a typo there. It should say doesn't. Same as the next one, does not provide, oh, it says does not. Sorry, apparently I can't read anymore. Apologies, everybody. Does not provide direct connection from Robie Street and Massachusetts Avenue to the Fairview Cove Container Terminal or Windsor Street. So those are those exceptions that we're talking about in terms of improving direct connectivity with the Fairview Cove Container Terminal, which of course is a pretty important objective of this project. There's a larger project area than option A, so this is a bit of a comparison with option A, which may result in higher implementation costs, just in terms of land acquisition and the cost of building more infrastructure. It will increase the traffic on McIntosh Street and Bain Streets significantly. These are currently fairly low volume streets, and this would direct a fair bit of traffic, especially freight movement, to these streets. There's a longer AM and PM peak period queues that are anticipated on certain streets than with option A. So that's just the length of the queues. Larger project area with more property impacts, of course, again, with those financial implications. And then longer wait time at crossings due to signalized intersections with potential turning vehicle conflicts. That's specifically for active transportation uses, and that is in compared to A. Next slide, please. So in terms of summary and next steps for the project, as we discussed at the start of the project, we completed phase 1, which saw us do stakeholder and public engagement and to look at existing conditions. We've completed an operational analysis and confirmation of lane configuration. We've completed conceptual designs and finally the designs that you saw tonight, the options A and B and their analysis. We're currently at our final stage in phase 2, which is stakeholder and public engagement. More on that later. This evening is certainly not the only way to participate. And following phase 2, we're going to be moving into phase 3, which brings us to preliminary design, which is looking at a more detailed version of the preferred design. So doing a little bit more analysis of exactly what is going to be, exactly what the benefits and drawbacks are of each option in terms of our different evaluation criteria for option A and option B, and then the project team will be moving that option, moving the preferred option into a preliminary design level, at which point we'll be coming back out to stakeholders and the public, and that is currently targeted for spring of 2022. So we will look forward to seeing you again at that point. I believe we're now going to move into, if you go to the next slide there, into the question and discussion period. We're going to put the instructions back up. I think everybody's probably figured it out by now, but in case anybody hasn't, this is how to comment and submit questions. There's a Q&A box bubbles at the top of your screen there, and you can then go and submit questions. We will be trying to go through these in a bit of a systematic order and directing them to the different people on the project team that are able to answer those questions. So bear with us while we read through these questions and then publish them and allow for everybody to see them and have somebody available to answer them. I'm going to hand this over to Mike Connors, who's with HRM. He was introduced at the start of the project, and he's going to be moderating this, basically passing off these questions to the different people who will be answering them. Thanks, everybody.
All right, good evening, everybody. Mike Connors here. Happy to be here to moderate the question and answer session. I see a number of questions come in. We've been keeping an eye on them and looking forward to directing traffic here to the various people to answer the questions for you. Notice that some of the, obviously the earlier questions were specific to option 1 or option A, and later questions specific to option B, and then some were specific to both. So I guess new questions coming in, if you could identify which option you're referring to, or maybe you're referring to both, and then you can just be generic. So the first question's for Greg, and it relates to option A, but I think you could probably answer it for both option A and B. The question is, would there be a way for cyclists to carry up onto Windsor Street or Lady Hammond Road in option A from the Bedford Highway with no McDonald Bridge style fences, barrier fences?
As far as I guess along Windsor Street, I know HRM is looking at different options for there, so I'm not sure exactly I guess how the connections will be made between the facilities. But I guess similar to at the North Park Street roundabouts, for example, there are some lanes that you can exit from the facility and get onto a bike lane, for example. As far as continuing along Lady Hammond Road, there could be option to continue along Lady Hammond Road with a multi-use trail or other facility to, I guess, connect beyond this project area as well. So I'm not sure if that's answering the question, or if anybody else on the team here wants to add any thoughts on that.
Okay, Greg, I think that's good. We'll move on to the next question. So again, I'll go back to Greg for this one, and this one is specific to option A. Would the ramp from Lady Hammond Road up onto the bridge approach be eliminated and the roundabout used instead?
Yes, I apologize. I did mean to mention that in the presentation, but that actually applies for option A and B. So that would be I guess the right turn movement that's just to the west of the, I guess, auto repair shop that's on the screen. And that would be eliminated as part of this. And I guess to get from Lady Hammond Road towards the McKay Bridge, you would, in this option A, you would be, I guess, directed down and turn closer to the roundabout. And in option B, actually that movement occurs directly opposite of Kempt Road. So in both cases, that is being eliminated. It was seen as kind of sight distance, a little bit of tight ramp with some steeper grades. So I guess both options have considered that to be removed.
Okay, great. So another one for Greg, popular guy tonight. How does option A deal with conflicts of the traffic from Bedford Highway heading to Windsor Street and competing traffic from Joseph Howe Drive to the bridge?
I guess the roundabout analysis was completed to look at the lane configuration we have seen on the screen. There's, I guess, it's actually a 3-lane approach from Bedford Highway. So the left 2 lanes go towards the McKay Bridge if you're entering the roundabout from Bedford Highway at Windsor Street. And I guess the middle lane is shared, so the middle lane and the right lane continue straight through towards Kempt Road and Lady Hammond. And again, a big feature of how this can work is removing over 50% of the left turning volume that we currently see out there, and it's now bypassing the intersection. So much reduced volume at the Windsor Street intersection than we currently see. And yes, that volume is in conflict with the traffic, I guess, in the morning entering from Windsor Street that wants to, I guess, travel straight through. So that's certainly a good question, but the modeling that was completed to date does look at the lane configuration, and I guess the lanes that are shown are showing good promise for that.
All right, thanks, Greg. Another one back to Greg related to active transportation. So this project integrates AT, or active transportation. How will the design speed of the roundabouts be designed to provide safe and comfortable movement for people walking and biking?
As I mentioned previously, that the size scale of these roundabouts that we're seeing on the screen are smaller than what you'd see at Armdale. I guess key features at multi-lane roundabouts. I'll point out the bottom roundabout is multi-lane. The one at Bain Street is single lane. So single lane certainly ideal and much better for pedestrians. But any of the crossings expect would have the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. As far as design speed, I guess we had one of the comments before is kind of does look at the location and spacing of the, I guess, crosswalk from the yield bar. So that's I guess an important feature so that approaching drivers can focus on the pedestrian crosswalks rather than, I guess, and then after that deal with the, I guess, looking at the vehicle conflicts.
All right, thanks, Greg. Another question on active transportation, and this one might apply to both options. How does a cyclist who is going from Windsor Street to Bedford bike along the Bedford Highway? If I'm on a multi-use pathway on the south side of the highway, how do I get into the right lane of the highway as I'm required to do, for example, biking on the road versus the sidewalk?
I guess somebody from the HRM side might be able to expand on this answer, but I guess this project area is what we're seeing is cut off on the left side of the screen, and continuing on from here is another project that HRM's completed for the Bedford Highway Functional Plan, and I guess we're working to make sure that the project is coordinated. So the blue line doesn't just end here. So beyond here, moves on to the Bedford Highway Functional Plan, which is planned to include a multi-use pathway continuing on the same side of Bedford Highway.
Okay, Greg, yeah, and that I can expand a little bit on that. So the Bedford Highway Functional Plan will have a multi-use path on the basin side. That's the plan, and that will happen near the Acura dealership. So we'd cross over there and integrate that way with the AT network. I'm going to pass another question over to Greg, and I think this would apply again to both options. But do you think that these options are easier for a tourist to navigate through the intersection? So an unfamiliar user, what are your opinion on how they would operate through the intersection?
I guess signage is certainly an important part of a design like this. You can't readily see that you have to turn left, for example, to get to the McKay Bridge, but there's less lanes and less queuing than we would currently see along the Bedford Highway. So expect it will be actually a little bit easier to navigate than what we see now for the morning peak. So for example, if you're traveling in on the Bedford Highway, if you're not familiar with the area, you might be in the right lane. If you want to go to, I guess, towards the McKay Bridge, if you travel on the cemetery in the right lane in AM peak traffic, you're probably going to be ending up going up Lady Hammond Road and turning around somewhere and getting back. So it is quite difficult with the queuing we see now to, I guess, get into the lane if you don't make a decision well in advance of the intersection. So I guess through proper signage, and then I guess again, where is your destination? That's really what a driver would be focusing on. If they want to go to Dartmouth, follow the signs towards Dartmouth and kind of blur all the other information out into the background. I think I mentioned before, it's more the people that are familiar with it that kind of drive it and don't even see the signs anymore. I guess they'll certainly see construction here and changes. So I guess maybe until they get used to it, then it'll be important to kind of know what lane to be in and how you travel through it. But that's I guess navigability through the area is certainly important, and as I mentioned before, both are very complex, but really the whole area is complex. You get past the next one, you have to continue on. Do you take the Massachusetts Avenue exit, or do you continue on? And I guess there's a number of decision points as you travel, I guess, between Barrington Street and McKay Bridge in this area. So not a lot different than what you have to travel through now in the area. But the reduced queuing should really help.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg. So the next one again for you, Greg. What performance criteria are you using to measure each option? How do they compare? How do they compare with the status quo?
I guess we're comparing, I guess, performance criteria a number of factors. So some of the initial ones are kind of vehicle queuing, delay for vehicles, how do, I guess one of the primary drivers of the project was how do we connect the port traffic to, I guess, the roadway network. So both provide, I guess, connections right at and off of Windsor Street. So I guess delay and connections to the port. I guess how our transit times impacted through the corridor is being looked at, and I guess where can transit times actually be improved is, I guess, one of the next steps we're working on. So as far as safety, kind of what we're doing is reducing a lot of the vehicle conflict, the weaving. Was mentioned a couple times. Even the previous round of engagement was some of the lanes that really end. So if you're traveling right now through the area, you're turning left from Windsor Street or traveling westbound on Lady Hammond Road. You have 2 lanes that really drop to 1 pretty soon after the intersection. I think those are some of the comments we got kind of on the existing conditions that I guess a lot of the attendees were looking to kind of have solved through changes.
Great, thanks again, Greg. So I'm going to move over to a question to Megan Soroka. So area residents and stakeholders are interested in the overall National Trade Corridors Fund project and how the rail cut will be used for port and other potential activity.
So as I mentioned in the beginning of the night, part of the funding for this project is coming from Transport Canada through the National Trade Corridors Fund, and HRM applied for that project with the Port of Halifax as a partner, as well as the province of Nova Scotia. So the Port of Halifax also has a project that they're doing that was approved at the same time. We call it a complementary project that they're looking at upgrades that will move some of the truck traffic off downtown streets and onto a rail shuttle between the South End Container Terminal and the Fairview Cove Container Terminal, as well as some other upgrades around both port terminals. So that's the reason that this project is so important to trade is trucks traveling to and from Fairview Cove Container Terminal can get stuck in the same traffic that vehicles and transit are stuck in as well. So we're trying to alleviate this bottleneck in our road network, so that will improve truck access to and from the port, as well as we mentioned, all of the other goals that we have as a city to improving transportation for all road users.
All right, thanks, Megan. And on behalf of Greg, thanks. I'm sure he appreciated the break, but we're going to go back to him for the next one. Is there a traffic flow chart comparing the possibility of backups between both options? Traffic lights will cause a lot of backups, as far as I'm concerned, as I use the Larry UTEC roundabouts, and the traffic flows beautifully there no matter the time of day.
One of the next steps of what we're working on in the project is to get summarize.
Greg's cut out there, but just for a second, give him a second to come back. I think you're good, Greg. Go
Hello?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Okay. I think I had a beautiful answer for that question, but I think the question was on the traffic flow and queuing at really be talking about option B and the traffic signals. What we're working on is a functional design report, which looks at the really, I guess, a lot more detail on the analysis and what we were able to present this evening. But correct, will be, I guess, with Main Street, there is quite a significant volume and some delays in queuing there. And one of the nice things about a roundabout sometimes is even when there is queuing, it's more of a moving queue. And I guess for the tourists, it might be a little bit easier to get into a queue that's moving slowly rather than a stopped queue, and then they have to stop and block traffic. The traffic flow diagrams and further kind of comparison where queuing is through the network will be included in the analysis we're still working through.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Next question back to you again. What stops Dartmouth traffic from shortcutting through Bain Street? Wouldn't this overburn Bain Street and the container port?
This is specific to option B, just to be clear.
Okay, I guess option A or B are both well connected through from, I guess, Africville or Bain Street towards, to get from Bain Street to shortcut. I guess using Bain Street is actually not a shortcut. It's actually the route you would need to use in option B to get, can we flip over to option B just to maybe easier for everybody to see while I'm answering that? I guess on the top of the screen is the exit from, I guess, the Dartmouth and Barrington Street. So I guess traffic from Dartmouth is actually not bypassing the area to get to, or shortcutting to get to Windsor Street. That is the route they would have to take to get to Windsor Street or Lady Hammond Road or Kempt. And I guess if the question is, would people take that exit to bypass and get over to Bedford Highway? I guess if there was an incident on the overpass portion, certainly expect people would use that, but on an everyday basis, there's going to be, I guess you're traveling through two sets of signals if you try and take that as a shortcut rather than, I guess, bypassing the whole area with no signals.
Greg, maybe you should speak to it with option A as well. It did come in during option B, but it's possible that someone meant option A.
If it's talking about, I guess, people traveling from, I guess, Barrington Street to get around this whole area to get to, I guess, newly connected ramps at the roundabout or at the signalized intersection to get towards Dartmouth. Don't expect a lot of people would travel that whole way, or get around Africville Road to get towards Dartmouth, as there's, I guess, continuing along Barrington, and there's a direct ramp that goes, I guess, from Barrington Street onto the McKay Bridge that would be, I guess, much more efficient.
Okay, great. Lots of great questions here. Keep them coming. Next one again for Greg. Can more one-ways be integrated into option A so that there can be fewer four-way intersections?
Not sure exactly. I guess fewer four-way intersections. I guess the two roundabouts are essentially two four-way intersections. I guess with Bain Street, there's an extra lag on that roundabout. A lot of these ramps we're seeing here they're multi-lane, but they're one direction. So I'm not sure if that is causing any confusion just looking at the scale we have here. But I guess at the Windsor Street intersection, the roundabout at the bottom roundabout, it's essentially a four-leg intersection with, I guess, the top two legs going towards and from the McKay Bridge approaches. The bottom two legs are Windsor Street. The west two legs of that roundabout would be to and from Bedford Highway, and the east two legs are the Lady Hammond approaches.
Okay, thanks, Greg. I'm going to go back to you again. Question wonders what options have more dedicated public transport lanes? So maybe a comparison between how each option looks at transit priority or public transit.
As I mentioned before, I guess right now none of these options, neither option is showing kind of dedicated transit lanes. So that is really the next step of the project, is to, I guess, continue to advance these options to, I guess, look at those features and where we can add some transit priorities. We have some ideas of, I guess, some other transit priority measures that kind of could feed into this area, kind of just at the edges of the project area that I guess may help, I guess, transit navigate through this area as well. So we're in the process of looking into a few of those options. But I guess what we're presenting this evening for comparison between the two is, I guess, the overpass structure is in the middle of both of them is 2 lanes from Dartmouth and 1 lane, I guess, towards Dartmouth on the grade separated portion.
Good, thanks, Greg. Going to go back to you again, Greg. So for both options, given the time and investment in making these improvements, it's disappointing that they don't meet transportation objectives from the regional plan, emphasizing public transit, active transportation, carpooling, and other viable alternatives to the single occupant vehicle. I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but maybe you can comment on that, Craig.
I guess this this project is looking to achieve, I guess, many objectives in a quite constrained geographic area. It looks like a large area, but we're trying to fit a lot in here. So we really looked at a balanced approach for, I guess, what can we accommodate with AT, active transportation, getting I guess connections to the north to better connect to Africville Road, better connect the Fairview Cove container terminal. So again, we looked at all the objectives. It takes up space to I guess accommodate those features. As far as carpooling, I think that's probably beyond this. Anything that we can do to reduce the volumes. I guess some of the volume projection information that was provided did look at the regional planning studies of transit ridership and where I guess growth is occurring and is expected to travel through this area in the coming years. And certainly it's an important hub to have transit connect through.
Okay, Greg, thanks. I'll give you a little break and take the liberty of answering the next one myself. How do I engage or give feedback with the project that would connect this project area to AT connections further up the Bedford Highway? So I'll even add to that and say that there's another project over connecting to Africville Park that Greg mentioned. So our project teams work very closely on these projects. So if we encourage all of you to provide your feedback to this project, and it will be shared and integrated with those other projects. It's obviously very important that we're considering each other on those projects. It's an important part of the connectivity of the network. So the next question, I will go back to Greg. While the AT connections are being created and improved, it should be, in my opinion, developed further and be on an equal level or greater with vehicular traffic. I do like the current changes, but they feel like only a start and not the solution that we need moving to the future, where active transportation infrastructure will be needed. We need induced demand for cycling, walking, and running, and all AT modes alongside the use of public transit. Will you be looking at how to further AT in this or the next step of the process for the Windsor Street Exchange? And I actually might let Greg start with that, but we might let Megan Backos add to that if she wants.
Sure, I'll start. I guess AT, as I mentioned, there's a very constrained geographic area. This project is requiring land acquisition on the north side of Bedford Highway, so that's really a very tight corridor there. With the I guess we're up against the cemetery on the south side. There, I guess, could potentially be future expansions to this too, as I saw in some of the earlier comments about adding more AT infrastructure on the north side, and that would certainly be a good idea to, I guess, look to at least reserve land if for future expansion to, I guess, put some more AT facilities to connect on the north side. Again, that's really if the area to the west of here, I guess, can accommodate that, because we don't want to have Maltese Trail or any facility that just really dead ends without any plans for further connection. I guess the AT, if there's different AT facilities along Windsor Street, where I guess really both options can tie into those, if it's a bike lane on each side, and then that would work, or if it ends up being a dedicated cycle facility on one side or the other of Windsor Street, for example, then this could really connect well into that as well. Megan, I don't know, I guess the project objectives, one of the objectives is we do have to accommodate traffic flow through this area. So I guess the nature of the area is a lot of roads converge here, and that's how we have to get, I guess we do connect to the McKay Bridge. They're one of the stakeholders on the project as well, the Harbour Bridges. And it's an important, I guess, transportation mode or node for all modes, really. Don't know if anybody has anything they want to add to that, or.
I can, this is Megan Backus, and I can just jump in really quickly because the Africville area was brought up as, the question was more specific to the Bedford Highway AT connections and how to provide feedback on there. But as mentioned, on the other side of the Windsor Street Exchange, they're looking at making some potentially future connections into the Africville Park, which would connect into the project I'm managing, which is the Africville AT connections. So as far as providing feedback to help coordinate that connection, we'd love to hear your feedback on the proposed AT connections in these options right now. But also the Africville AT project currently has opportunities to provide feedback, specific to that project online. So that's, I think, as mentioned previously in the presentation, it'll be on the Shape Your City webpage, which will be linked to the Windsor Street Exchange Shape Your City webpage that you'll get the link to later on. So we have an online survey. So we'd love to hear your feedback about that project. And if you want to leave feedback about how you'd like to connect into the Windsor Street Exchange on that project as well, we'll all be working together to compile that feedback.
Great, thanks, Greg and Megan. So for the next question, I'll go back over to Greg. Acknowledging the amount of land you have to deal with, you have determined lane configurations. Per your summary slide, have you determined multi-use path or sidewalk and bike lane configurations? So I think it's wondering, you've determined the configuration of the roadway lanes. Have we determined the multi-use pathway or lane configurations, Greg?
Sorry, Mike, was that how did we configure them, or
I think have we? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess looking at the land and really, if we look at the Bedford Highway portion that goes from the cemetery towards the north, you start carving off what is required to accommodate trucks, buses, cars, and active transportation. And I guess what we're showing right now, I believe, is in the 3.5 meter range for the multi-use trail along the Bedford Highway. The one the multi-use trail curves and travels down McIntosh Street, it's going underneath where there's an existing bridge, and there's, I guess, a limited width of that. So that portion of the multi-use trail, we're currently looking at a 3 meter trail. So the section along McIntosh, at least when we're in proximity to the bridge and the more constrained portion of McIntosh Street. Don't know if that answered, if I got all that question, or if there's anything further to add.
Good, no, that's good. Thanks, Greg. So the next one, I'm going to go back to you again, Greg. Will smart channels be used in the slip lane locations? What is the design speed for a smart channel? Maybe, Greg, if you wouldn't mind just explaining what a smart channel is.
A smart channel would be, I guess, a right turn channel that would operate similar to the way a roundabout does. So like as pedestrian movements and conflicts would be kind of dealt with by a driver first, and then pull up to the area of the yield, and I guess yield to traffic for the right turn. And the smart portion of it is really the angle of the entry. So again, similar to a roundabout, I guess we've seen some right turn channels where you're really almost looking out the back window of your car to see if you can, I guess, yield and get into the traffic flow. And I guess, unfortunately, in those situations, you're not able to see kind of the right corner of the car, and that's when I guess it's not a good situation for pedestrians as well. Sometimes they get a lot of rear end collisions with another car. You're looking behind you to see if there's a gap in traffic to pull out, and you can't really see the car in front of you may not have already pulled out. So the smart right turn channel is kind of just the approach angles and kind of design features. So I guess the option on the screen now, I guess the only right turn channel we're really seeing here would be from Windsor Street. And I guess what do those crosswalks look like? Those are, I guess, really removed from where the yield point would be for the right turn bypass from Bedford Highway to Windsor Street. So it'd be more as a typical crosswalk crossing a single lane of traffic. I guess in the other option, maybe we can just look at option B just for 1 second on that. So we can see on Windsor Street, we have looked at the, it's a little hard to see at this scale, but there's a right turn channel at northbound on Windsor Street, and that is looking at using the smart right turn channel idea. And the right turn, I guess in this case, we would be looking at a higher order pedestrian crossing at the larger right turn channel from Windsor Street. It could potentially be a pedestrian half signal or something along that line.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Going to take the next one to Megan. What impacts the local businesses besides the typical construction related impacts that we see with large construction projects? Can you comment on that, Megan Soroka?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you can recognize that this will be a major construction project and have some significant impacts when it's under construction. So as I mentioned in the initial overview, we're expecting, we have to wait until we've finalized our preferred design. Then we'll have a better idea of what the construction timelines and phasing will look like. We're expecting the construction will take 2 to 3 years. And right now we're planning on beginning in 2024. So there will be a lot of communication once we have our preferred design and have an understanding of construction that we'll be sharing with local landowners, with the businesses in the area, and of course with the public who are traveling through the area. So rest assured that there will be significant construction and mitigation measures that are considered for this project. As far as any permanent impacts, we really looked at keeping the design within our existing road right-of-ways. There may be some minor impacts to properties, but we're connecting with property owners directly on what those impacts might be. And we'll be working through those as we move through the design process.
Okay, thanks, Megan. I'm going to actually come back to you with the next one. We've got a few questions that are similar, just looking for more information on the connection for active transportation users between the Windsor Street Exchange and the Bedford Highway project. So maybe you could take a minute and explain those connections again.
Yes, absolutely. So for both projects, we are working very closely, both on our design and talking about construction timelines as well. HRM has a capital planning process that we go through, and we look at all of the capital projects that are on the books and planned out for a few years' time. So when it comes to the Bedford Highway project as well as the Windsor Street Exchange project, we're looking to integrate the design, but also how the construction will be phased to make sure that those connections happen seamlessly. So again, since we don't have a preferred design option that we're working with, we don't have answers on how that might work out currently, but we'll have some answers on that as we have a preferred design and move through the construction phasing process. But rest assured that we are working very closely. We have this, we all work on the same team here, so we're making sure that that things are aligned and that we really are looking to make sure that connections are made through the area as well. And while the options that the picture that you see on your page shows connections to nowhere, in our minds we are seeing some connections made at the edges of the project. This is just sort of the limits of the project scope for Windsor Street Exchange.
Okay, thanks, Megan. I'm going to go back over to Greg for the next one, and it refers to both options. So will these options address the ramp from Joseph Howe Drive into the Windsor Street Exchange? During the morning peak hours, this turns into an unintended 2-lane ramp that is very confusing and dangerous for vehicles vying for space to continue on the McKay Bridge and those continuing on today. Go ahead, Greg.
It will certainly be an improvement to the existing condition. Traffic from Bedford that is now queuing up and I guess using some of the capacity through the signalized intersection to turn left towards Dartmouth is now, I guess, shifted over and bypassing the area, so there's a lot less weaving traffic. So I guess I'm quite familiar with the area, and I guess if you want to go to Lady Hammond or Kempt Road, you kind of squeeze by on the right. If you're going to, I guess if you want to get to Dartmouth, you kind of stay on the left side of that ramp from Joseph Howe and kind of work into the mix. What really slows it down is the queue extends, I guess, past that right turn channel. So when you're trying to go to the, I guess, lanes to get to Dartmouth, if it's queued up, you're sitting there, and that's I guess why it became, I guess, de facto dual lane is that traffic that really doesn't want to go to Dartmouth is able to squeeze by and get over to Lady Hammond Road and Windsor Street. So reducing the amount of, I guess, traffic that's doing that will reduce the queues, as well as there's, I guess, less volume that you have to, I guess, squeeze over to get into. So there really is no advantage to anybody that coming from Bedford to, I guess, stay in the right lane and get up to the signals. So really the signal approach at or the roundabout approach to get to Dartmouth is, I guess, really going to be used by traffic from the Joe Howe ramp. So I guess all the traffic from the Joe Howe ramp will be able to get to the, I guess, yield line at the roundabout or the signals, and not have, I guess, other Bedford Highway traffic in the queue in front of them.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Next one, I'm going to go back over to Megan. Does your initial pros and cons analysis consider the pillars of the integrated mobility plan?
And yeah, that's a great question. So for this project, the approach that we're taking with the design process is a complete streets approach. You may have heard a lot about this, the new Red Book guidelines or municipal design guidelines that are being adopted by HRM consider the complete streets approach with redesign projects such as this. So what the complete streets approach considers is what types of traffic are, what types of road users are moving through the area, and how should this area be considered. So this is obviously a key link in our road network, and so we look at it from a perspective of a link, making connections through the area for all road users and encouraging it to be safer so that people can make those shifts to alternative modes of transportation where it fits into their schedule.
Great, thanks, Megan. And I'm going to come back to you for the next one. A couple questions talking about surrounding land uses and whether or not they may or not become up for sale in coming years. Is there any consideration for surrounding land uses with the change in land use around those pieces of land be applicable to this project, traffic volumes, etc., or is it negligible? Any thoughts on that, Megan?
Yeah, and so we are connecting with adjacent landowners about how they're currently using their property, any future plans. We are also considering when we look at the traffic moving through here, we are accounting for growth both adjacent to the site as well as Fairview and Bedford and Clayton Park are all fast-growing neighborhoods. This of interest, very close to the site. The center plan does indicate, or does have the Strawberry Hill Street area indicated as a growth node. So we're anticipating that will be an area of growth. And that's part of the reason we want to make sure that we're making solid connections through the area so that people who are living nearby, or as population grows in feeder neighborhoods through this area, that can be accommodated in our redesign.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to go back to Greg for the next one, and we've had a few about roundabouts in general. Greg, could you speak about roundabouts and pedestrian safety and what kinds of treatments they might use to help with alerting drivers to pedestrians making their crossings at roundabouts?
And again, I guess the roundabouts are with pedestrian movements, I guess, roundabouts and vehicle conflicts anywhere is a concern. So specifically at roundabouts, we look at how many conflict movements there are. So is that essentially you're crossing traffic at right angle? So I guess versus a signalized intersection, you're only looking at, I guess, really one direction of travel at a time. So there's a little bit of simplicity for, I guess, traffic movements, the traffic vehicle conflict. The signalized intersection, for example, if you're walking across on a walk light, often you can get traffic that's turning left across the path of the pedestrian. I guess that at a signalized intersection, the left turn, often they're looking and I guess looking for a gap in traffic, looking to yield to, I guess, oncoming traffic, and unfortunately sometimes don't see the pedestrian crossing. So with a roundabout, that does not occur because it's really just one direction of travel at a time. Alerting approaching drivers to the presence of a pedestrian with the flashing beacons are really a feature that's been, I guess, looked at and encouraged, especially at multi-lane roundabouts.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I'm going to come back to you again for the next one related to active transportation and differences between the options. So can you talk about what AT measures have been evaluated to compare the two options to the status quo? What is your AT baseline?
I guess comparison of both options, like I mentioned before, is very similar. So we're looking to connect the facilities being planned on Bedford Highway to the west of the project area, and I guess keeping options open to the north. And I guess the baseline is right now there are no AT facilities. There's a sidewalk along the cemetery. There's no facilities for biking. If you're biking, you're in mixed traffic. It's I guess a very high volume area for biking and mixed traffic, so it's not a real popular thing to do. Not many cyclists do that. I guess a good comparison might be what was recently implemented on Bears Road. So I guess recently, if anybody has seen Bears Road, there's a section of multi-use trail that was recently implemented, really from Romans Avenue up towards Connaught Avenue. And that's a multi-use facility, multi-use trail. And I guess that has encouraged, I guess, more cyclists to use that routing. It will certainly be better when I guess the next phase of that project, for example, when it's connected further, will be an enhancement. So the baseline is there was no real good AT bicycle connection, I guess, through the area, kind of from Windsor Street to the west. And I guess the objective of this was to make sure we are connecting kind of to the projects to the west and to the east, and I guess good connections to the Windsor Street facilities. So I guess we're well connected with the bicycle connections, as well as, I guess, enhancing and improving connectivity of the sidewalk network.
Okay, thanks, Greg. I'm going to come back to you again. Another question about roundabouts. How much study's been done to determine whether it's safe to move trucks pulling large trailers through roundabouts alongside passenger vehicles?
Apologize, Mike, but I completely missed that whole question. It was frozen up for me.
Greg, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
So just talk about the design process and how for roundabouts and how it considers how large trucks travel through roundabouts beside passenger vehicles.
I guess there's features that are included in roundabouts for larger vehicles. I guess part of that would look at where the lane widths, how vehicle tracks around the corner, so where the wheels on the trailer as a truck is turning around a roundabout. I guess truck aprons, so it'll be a concrete area kind of really in the center of a circle that oftentimes the back wheels of a tractor trailer would track over. So there's like a space beyond where I guess passenger vehicles generally would be comfortable traveling, or really shouldn't be traveling at all. So it's and that's reserved for, I guess, larger vehicles to get through.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Again, I'm going to go back to you. Question specific to option B and traffic signal synchronization. So how would you make sure the two sets of lights are going left? How would you make sure the two sets of lights going left from Bedford Highway toward the port are synchronized? You would need to go left through two sets of lights, so there would be a huge backup of traffic and trucks onto the Bedford Highway. Question. So talk about the synchronization between those signals.
Yeah, I guess should point out that this option actually has 5 sets of signals. So on Bain Street itself, there's a signal at Windsor Street and one at McIntosh Street as well. And then along Bedford Highway, Lady Hammond Road, there's one at Windsor Street, one at Kempt Road, and one at Lady Hammond. Now the signal at Kempt Road is fairly straightforward. It's one way eastbound, one way towards Lady Hammond Road, so it can be coordinated fairly simply. I guess the coordination between the two closer spaced intersections would be, I guess, along Windsor Street and the Bain Street intersection. So one thing for the Windsor Street intersection, and I guess the one-way section on Lady Hammond Road helps that intersection operate because there's no opposing traffic. So light goes green for Bedford Highway. There's only one what we call signal phase, so we don't have to worry about flashing green arrows or have to deal with other traffic movements. So the light goes green for Bedford Highway, and I guess the movements go, and you can go towards the bridge or Lady Hammond and Kempt Road. So the intersection is simplified quite a bit from the existing intersection where you have to wait for, I guess, multiple left turn phases and a long time to cycle around. So as far as coordination, they could be interconnected with, I guess, a little bit maybe beyond the stage of design we're at now, but they could be hardwired, interconnected, possibly even as the same signal controller for the Bain Street and the Windsor Street. Bain Street at Windsor and the Bedford Highway at Windsor Street signalized intersection. Okay,
great. Thanks, Greg, and thanks to all of our question answers over the last half hour, 45 minutes. Really good questions from everybody and good answers. Looking at the time, we're almost out of time. I'm going to pass it over to our project manager, Megan Soroka, to tie things up for us.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks to everyone who submitted comments and questions. I know we didn't get to them all. I tried to answer some questions directly, so if you didn't see them published and it just came to you, that might be why you see. But we would really like to continue to hear from you about this project. To hear more, you can visit our Shape Your City website. The link is right there, but if you go to shapeyourcityhalifax.ca, it's on the main page, one of the top projects. And on the site, if your question didn't get answered, you can ask questions in the online forum. I'll be checking in on there regularly over the time that we're doing this engagement to answer questions. You can also fill out the online survey. We're looking to hear from you on how each option might impact the way you use the Windsor Street Exchange, which option you prefer. And also and any other comments or feedback that you have on the two options. And then you can also see my contact information there if you need more information or you have other questions that need to be answered. Again, we really appreciate everyone's time this evening to join us and hear about this really exciting project. And we'll be posting this video on the Shape Your City page, so you can revisit it, share it with those that weren't able to attend. We also have a short version walking through the concept options if you just want to get an idea of how the concepts work before filling out the online survey. So again, thank you, and we hope to hear more from you soon.